Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by the Life Force Academy. Life Force Academy, amazing way to have a really good, strong, inspired home meditation practice, yoga practice, Kundalini Yoga. You can access it from anywhere in the world, whether you want to do our inspiring live streams every week or one of the countless on-demand classes, meditation practices, whether you want a good yoga practice for right when you get up in the morning to have good energy throughout the day, or perhaps you want something to have a good night's sleep right before you go to bed, or maybe if you're feeling some worries and some nervousness, you want to use the practice to kind of reduce your worrying energy. There's something for everyone. Whether you're brand new to Kundalini Yoga, yoga practice, meditation practice, or you're a long-time practitioner, it'll meet you right where you're at. It's a beautiful experience, worldwide, global community of members in over 60 countries around the world. Life Force Academy, just go to lifeforce.yoga. That's the URL. Just type that into your browser, lifeforce.yoga, and you can begin your 2-week trial for just $1 as a listener of this podcast. Also, the link is in the podcast description here, or you can type the URL into your browser, lifeforce.yoga, to start a 2-week trial for just $1. That's the Life Force Academy. I'd love to have you a part of it. Thanks for listening to the podcast, everyone. Really happy you're here with us. Another beautiful episode today. Excited for you to hear it. Thanks to everyone who's been listening. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. If you like what you hear, please consider leaving us a rating or review. Really do appreciate that. And thanks so much, everyone. Enjoy the episode. Hey, greetings, my friends. Another fun episode today with NATALIA Benson, good friend of mine. She's an inspiration. She's a beautiful sister. She's a women's empowerment coach. She's a modern mystic. She's an astrologer. And I think you're going to dig this and love her and enjoy listening to our conversation. We had a great time. One of the few podcasts in the last year that I've been able to do with in person. It wasn't on Zoom, and I was down at her place for an evening, and we had such a great time. And I'm sure it probably comes through here. We talk lots of astrology. We talk about her life, which I really didn't know a lot about. So I really enjoyed it. And check NATALIA out. She's doing amazing work, working with women, with all genders, but predominantly with women, and with just lifting them up, inspiring people, elevating people, sometimes within the business context, sometimes within the spiritual context, but it really all rolls into one, doesn't it? So enjoy the podcast, my friends. Check NATALIA Benson out at her website, nataliabenson.com. And enjoy the pod. Leave us, please, a rating or review. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Wherever you get your podcasts, leave us a 5-star review if you're digging what you're hearing. And lots of love, everyone. Enjoy the episode.
Check, check. Dope.
Sound good?
It's a great setup.
Isn't that good? And you can travel easy with it.
Turn this up a little.
Yeah.
Check, check, check.
I have too much stuff.
This is awesome.
It's so easy.
This is so cool.
You can put it in a suitcase.
What? It's a rainbow too.
I know.
Will you send me the link for that?
Yes.
That looks beautiful. I'm excited. You know I love an oracular moment.
I had to process that for a moment.
Oh, man. Are we recording?
We are.
Cool. This is way cooler when you're just like shooting the shit.
I agree.
You know?
I do.
When people introduce me while I'm on the phone, I'm always like,
There's different ways to do it, but I noticed that the podcasts I like to listen to the most are the ones where, it does feel like a more natural conversation.
Yeah, you just dive in. Yeah. I loved your episode with Drupada. And you guys just like it's I don't know, because humans, we are like we're storytellers and we love to receive story. So I think that's the beauty of podcasting, when it's like natural and you're just going into story and conversation. It's just, we just get caught. We don't even realize it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how so much of our lives gets translated in a meaningful way, is through that. I know Drupada has that way, and he can talk about life through the lens of astrology, which both you and I love.
Yes.
And
I'm excited maybe we can talk about that, because, I love when I'm like, yeah, and Pluto is transiting. You're like, okay, so what that actually means in Sidereal. I'm like, oh yeah, that's every time.
Right. Well, to explain to people who are not familiar. So I spend my time studying Vedic astrology, or a good bit of my time, but still I'm just really a beginner student. I mean, in a certain way, we kind of all are beginner students, and just relative to what. But I'm definitely, I go to somebody like Drupada to really get a transmission of what is this here. But also we all have our intuition, and we can understand it at a meaningful level kind of right away.
Yes.
And so you work with Western astrology that uses the tropical zodiac, and the Vedic astrology uses sidereal zodiac. But what I like about talking with you is it doesn't matter.
Yes.
In the sense that because if somebody was too far on one side of the brain or the other, you have a hard time computing, well, how can this system that's calculating the sky in this way versus this system that's calculating the sky in another way? Whereas, like, for instance, right now, tropical zodiac Saturn is in Aquarius, and at the time of this recording, and in sidereal zodiac Capricorn, Saturn's in Capricorn. And yet somehow both of them work.
Yes.
And so materialists will not be able to get down with that because it just doesn't work with that way of worldview.
It doesn't make any freaking sense.
Right.
I still have moments where I'm like, but I feel myself to be deeply, deeply mystical, and just, it's a feeling. It's like, I don't, well, you continue, but
No.
It's just beautiful, because that is like, I actually read an article where this guy writing for Forbes was just bashing astrology. And I was so hurt. It like broke my heart, because I was like, wow, like, how can you be so against something that just sings my soul, And the Western and the tropical, it just really speaks to me. But carry on, because this has been what's been so beautiful is I've read your chart and you've shared your chart with me. It's like, none of it competes. It always complements.
Yeah, and in fact can even reinforce in an interesting way. And I think that's a much more, and I think it's a nice kind of avenue into what you do as well, because it's a more feminine approach to life. Whereas, because when I hear you say, well, astrology is just a feeling, or not, that's not what you said, but I'll let you say how you would express it.
Yeah.
But what I mean by when you said that, I can hear people like, I can hear the people's minds just be kind of like, you write that off. But to me, that's unfortunate, because when people, well, it's just a feeling, doesn't mean that it's completely subjective. There's a subjective aspect to it, but there's also, it's an art as much as it is a science.
I say that all the time.
And so if you're only looking at it from like a materialistic point of view and science from that context, then yeah, you would never really get it. But if you allow room for intuition and you allow room for spaciousness, and instead it becomes principles and a way of kind of looking through a lens into an aspect of life, and then allowing yourself to understand more, predominantly, mostly about yourself.
Yes.
And your own mental tendencies.
Yep.
And then that also can extend to understanding others.
Absolutely. Something I like to say about my work and being a student and a practitioner of astrology is very simply that it is a tool for self-compassion and self-awareness. And I really believe that, especially, I'm very passionate about natal chart astrology. So I actually realized that recently. I'm just not, I wouldn't say that it's my passion to keep up with everything, all the nuances and the shifts, as it is for some astrologers who are just so brilliant at that. I feel like for me, and especially as an Aries, so in my Western chart, I'm an Aries, I have a stellium in Aries, which is that focus to self. And that's a huge thing. That's how I've healed. That's how I've created what I've created, is really working with my own energy. And natal chart astrology was, in essence, the first mystical experience I ever had was having my natal chart read.
And when did that happen?
Oh my God, you know what? I was 22.
Mm-hmm.
I just moved to Los Angeles. I got broken up with by a Gemini. He actually lived in Oregon. Hold on, let me have a sip of my tea.
Yeah.
Here's my tea. But long story, very short, it was just a really beautiful welcome home. I'd never heard anyone speak. I think I mentioned this to you, like speak truth to me in the way, especially about myself. Like this astrologer, his name was Christopher Witecki. I talk about him in my book, the first book I ever wrote called Mystical AF. I based the whole thing off my natal chart. And what I mention is just very simply that he was speaking me to me and speaking things about me that no one knew. Like they were deep, very powerful pieces of my personality, my psychology, my soul, and my knowing that I never told anyone because I wasn't integrated with that part of myself yet. So yeah, and I found him just because a girlfriend of mine, when I was sobbing at lunch because this guy broke up with me, she was like, "Have you ever heard of astrology?" And I'll never forget those words because that was the beginning. And she introduced me to Christopher. He had a website called Soul Garden. He was like the precursor to the LFAs. He had this whole online world.
Yeah, when you have a session or consultation, whatever, with someone who's a really good astrologer, somebody who's really been doing it and and knows how to, be in that in between space of not too heady about it,
Yeah.
but understands it very, very deeply, and then can speak to you through that space with the horoscope as a guide. And I like how Drupada, I think in that podcast you listened to, he quotes Sri Yukteswar, who is the guru of Paramahamsa Yogananda and a great astrologer. He calls the horoscope a challenging portrait of the unalterable past and the probable future.
I loved that.
And so it gives you this kind of, okay, the unalterable past is essentially going to manifest as what are my emotional, mental tendencies? What are the potential challenges I can? And then what are the potential ways that I can really amplify the positive qualities of this life for me and what I'm good at, like what you're good at? Like I can look at your chart from the perspective I look at, and I can see certain things, and knowing you even a little bit, it was like, of course.
Yeah.
And so that's when it becomes really the reason why those of us who love astrology and have conviction in it. And when you read like some article that's like bashing it or discounting it, it's like, it doesn't sway anyone who actually knows it because it's experiential for us. It's undeniable for us. And it's not undeniable as in like being psychic and making predictions always correct.
And can I tell you a funny story?
Do it.
I remember, so I lived in Los Angeles for about 12 and a half years. And in my early 20s, around when I was just getting very deeply passionate and involved in my astrology studies, I worked at a juice bar after college. And it was right across from Amoeba Records. And anybody that would walk into that place, I'd be like, "What's your birthday?" It was
In
like
Amoeba Records in Hollywood?
No. It was in Hollywood.
Yeah.
It was across the street from Amoeba Records.
Right, over near Sunset and
Yeah. It was on Sunset and I don't know.
Yeah, I used to love Amoeba Records.
Maybe Cahuenga. I don't remember. Yeah. Amoeba's really cool. But anyhow, I just worked at this juice bar and like anybody that came in there, I was like, "Can I pull you a card and what's your birthday?" That was like how I got my start.
Oh, that's a great way to do it. Yeah.
It was so fun. And I was just deeply curious. Like I really wanted to know and I was always fascinated. And I remember this guy was like helping him with supplements. It was so funny. And I was like, "So, what's your birthday?" And he goes, "Oh, you want to know my astrology?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I don't believe in astrology." And I looked at him, I go, "Are you a Virgo?" And he goes, he looks at me, his face goes dumbfounded. He goes, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay." And no shade to any of our Virgos listening, because obviously also on every...
There's many facets of Virgo.
Exactly. There's many facets of every sign. And I really look at the expression because I'm an Aries. And unless you really get to know me, you don't see that typical Aries. I feel like every time I say Aries to you, I have to say in Western.
No, you don't. No, just speak your speak. Speak your work.
But yeah, it's unless you really get to know me, you don't really see. I don't often, at least anymore. I'm 33, about to be 34 in a couple months, and I don't feel like I direct that Martian intensity outwards anymore very often. But what I always say is that there are unique soul expressions. And I also look at it at varying levels of consciousness and the way that it expresses through a sign. So the reason I bring up about me being an Aries is because I've heard many times people say, "You don't strike me as an Aries, like at all." But I also have a Capricorn rising. And so that Capricorn energy, that Saturnian, very grounded discipline. I feel like also too, when a lot of people meet me, I can be a little bit shy, especially if I'm uncomfortable or I'm feeling uncomfortable. So it's just beautiful also to see, how the energy moves through people and how that's kind of the mystical side of me where I witness soul age and soul energy pour through the unique signs in, various facets, various ways.
That's cool.
Are you going to look at my chart, Jai?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I like how you said that, how soul energy, what do you say? How do you say that? Soul energy expresses
itself in unique facets and variations.
That's right. And you can get to it in lots of different ways. So that's why like sidereal zodiac and tropical zodiac, Vedic versus Western, my experience is they get to the same qualities through certainly different ways. So when you said I'm an Aries, it doesn't conflict in my mind because you have Mars in Aries.
Yes,
so in a certain important way, you are an Aries. You have that Mars energy that is strong in you. So one way of that happening is your sun is in Aries, and another way of happening it, your Mars is in Aries. And then how that's interpreted, ultimately it's the reason why it's experiential is because it's interpreted by life experience, not by us projecting something onto life experience as much as our projecting our life experience onto the horoscope in a certain way, motivated by an effort to understand and learn from our experiences.
Absolutely. And give it a lens. I feel like the thing that astrology gave to me, when I discovered it, right, 21, 22, was that it gave me a lens to look at the world that I felt I was missing, that had not been a part of my life. And not like, it wasn't like a life jacket. It was just like, this feels good. This fits. It was like putting on, like maybe wrapping myself in a blanket that I didn't know existed. And it has been such a tool for self illumination for me, and also contextualizing my power and the things about me that are fantastic, and also the things about me that are really challenging and maybe even expressed as a deficit, so that I have a jumping off point for the work to do.
Yeah, exactly. It does give insight. Such good. And I was wrong, actually. Your Mars isn't in Aries. Your Sun is in Aries and in Sidereal
Yes,
as well.
exactly. Yeah.
But your Mars is right next to it in Taurus, and where it's friendly there. And from this perspective, so here's just another way of getting to, like, it makes sense to me when I experience you and what you do in the world and how successful you are at doing it, in terms of not just like material success, but success, and real success is you're connected into a sense of purpose, and you're putting it to work, and you're using your Mars to put it into work, which I would imagine that's why your Mars isn't manifesting in the other more, miserable ways that it does manifest for all of us sometimes with a strong Mars.
Oh, I will just comment.
Yeah.
When I was not purposeful and on purpose, I think my fire was very misdirected.
Yeah.
I was very messy. Yeah.
Likewise.
And angry.
Yeah, I understand it.
Yeah.
I have Mars on my ascendant.
Yes.
And so I have that same, but then it has a different tone, Mars in Capricorn will have a different tone than Sun in Aries with Mars in Taurus.
Remember when you told me that Mars is exalted in Capricorn, and I was absolutely flabbergasted. I was like, and it's the same in Vedic and Western. But it's funny because in the tarot deck I work with, the Thoth deck, Mars in Capricorn is the Three of Discs works, I believe, and that's like a very strong card. It's very beautiful.
Well, you certainly have like a lot of this energy as a subtlety and a sensitivity, and this feminine spirit, in this case, manifests through like your most important planet, or in sidereal context, your Jupiter becomes your most important planet as your Lagna Lord, and is in Pisces, and then is there with your Venus and others, so when I like experience you, and it's just an example of what we're talking about. Like, that makes a lot of sense. It helps me understand your heightened qualities better, and your strengths, and of course you have Jupiter in Pisces, and of course you have the Moon and Saturn in your 12th house.
Oh my God, totally. Hence why
Mystical, and you're running a mystery school, and that's what that, so that would make perfect sense.
Oh, it's so cool. And, so in Western, my 12th house has obviously, what do I have in there? Oh my God. See, I forget because it's the 12th house. Okay. It's hidden. I actually do forget what's in my 12th often, but I have, I believe, Neptune in there, which is very powerful, very, very psychic. I mean, Neptune is the natural ruler of the 12th in Western, and then my Uranus is in there as well. And it's fascinating. It's actually interesting because just recently, so Mick, my partner, who, it's been so fun, we've been getting to hang out while you've been here. So he turned me on to a book called The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. Read it a couple years ago, and it changed my life. I was like, wow, this is the piece of information that I've been looking for. But it really speaks to also my Uranus and Neptune in the 12th.
How so?
Because really, anytime that you have a 12th house concentration, you have planets there, powerful points, it's really an opportunity, or not even so much an opportunity. Yes, an opportunity, but also a desire, I believe, by the soul to understand the depths of your psyche. And that's from a soul level, yes, but it's also from the subconscious level. So I've always been like, I remember when I did Kundalini training, it was just like learning about the subconscious. It was like me drinking water, and I'd been walking through the desert for 40 years. Like, I was so like, this is it. Like, where has this information been,
It helps you understand your own mind.
Yes.
And is that true for you? Is that why it felt like drinking water
Yes.
in the desert?
And I will say, like, to not go too deep into my past and my story, but like, I have transformed myself like quite literally. And Pluto was moving through my 12th for almost the last decade. And I have people who know me from my early 20s, 19, early 20s when I moved to LA, who quite literally are like, you are a completely different human being. Because the way I see it is, I was just holding a lot of, I think I brought a lot with me from other incarnations. I think I had stuff from my younger years that I carried with me, a lot of sorrow. It was interesting.
Where
It's
did you grow up
interesting.
again?
Ariz-
Young years, Arizona.
Arizona, yeah.
And you moved to LA at what time period?
So I moved to Los Angeles. I was in San Diego for school. I moved to Los Angeles in 2009, I believe. Yeah, the very beginning of 2009.
And was young childhood happy, challenging?
A little bit of both. Like, truthfully, it was gorgeous. My parents were wonderful. I did, unfortunately, when I was about 6, I was essentially sexually abused. So I did a very powerful meditation in a Tony Robbins event called Date with Destiny. And he said, go to an event that really hooks your energy, hooks your emotional trauma, and see it from the perspective of you, of God, of you, the you now, and then God. And that was really powerful because what revealed to me in that meditation was that was kind of the moment where I was like, oh man, like life isn't beautiful. Like I'm not safe. And I buried those things down for a very long time. But then around 18, 19, they were like, okay, time to deal with this. And that was really my whole 20s. So was really starting to like
I see.
heal and let go. And, I look at things too. So along with that 12th house concentration, I am very, very, very into past lives. Like I am fascinated by them. That was another piece of information on like my journey, that when I discovered like past lives, reincarnation, books like Journey of Souls, which I know Simrit, when I
Yeah, she
interviewed
loves that
her,
book.
when she said that was her favorite book, I
Yeah.
literally was like, oh, no wonder I love you so much. But Journey of Souls and
When you
Many
were
Lives, Many
when you were really
Masters.
young, did you have a sense of past lives, or is this something, a
No.
fascination that developed later?
Yes.
Yeah.
People always ask me if I was like, psychic or seeing things. Never, never. That was not me at all. Yeah. I was quite secular, I'd say.
Yeah.
And also my family was, my grandparents were phenomenal. Like the first time I ever meditated was with my bubby. It was with my grandma. So
And that was in Arizona? Did they live there?
yeah, yeah. And my grandpa too, he was very spiritual. They're both Jewish, like raised Jewish, spoke Yiddish, the whole shebang. But then, as they I want to say grew up, but they were like in their 50s. They got really into Sai Baba.
Okay.
And they were like going to like Sai Baba.
Oh,
I don't
cool.
know, doing stuff. That was like a teacher, guru that my grandma was really into.
Yeah, of course.
And they were just very soulful. So honestly, it's a beautiful question you ask, but my childhood was beautiful. But I think that occurring when I was 6 was just deeply like, my family handled it really well and really protected me, and I was believed, thank God.
So your parents found out about it at
Oh
the
yeah, I
time.
told them. Yeah. I told them almost immediately, because I knew something was wrong.
Right.
Like I knew it, even though I was young. But
Well, you felt safe enough to tell them at least. Yeah.
and they're beautiful. They're beautiful that they were. I've heard so many stories, especially working with women, where they're not believed, or they're
I know.
their other things are prioritized, and my heart aches for that, because I know that no matter if you have a healing presence in your life, it's still deeply hard. And But all in all, my relationship with my grandparents and the love and care and presence of my parents was phenomenal. Like it was very unique. Not perfect, of course, but beautiful foundations for
Yeah,
sure.
that is beautiful. Yeah, I think, a lot of people see folks that are pretty happy or become pretty happy, real spiritual sensibility in some expression or another, like yourself, and assume that, wow, their life is so good. And it is. However, a lot of the times, a lot of us get to this point is because we suffered quite a bit and were forced into finding other ways to live that didn't involve as much suffering. And I know that's true. Everybody suffers, and sometimes for whatever reason, our suffering can turn us towards something more solution oriented, but sometimes our suffering snowballs us into greater suffering. And so when you had received that astrology reading early 20s,
Yeah.
and what else did you have going on? What else catalyzed, like, from where you were? Like, did you have any sense of what you were wanting to do in your life in your early 20s?
No, well, yeah. So 19, I started my first business. I was in San Diego, I was in school, and I was like, I'm going to move to LA now and be a famous jewelry designer. And I'm going to make it, I'm going to feel worthy, and I'm going to be known, and everything's going to be great.
Were you good at it?
I guess, yeah, I taught myself. That's been my whole thing. I'm like self-taught. I'm just going to teach myself everything. So yeah, I taught myself my own technique. First it sucked, of course, and that's okay. It's okay to suck at something when you start.
Of course.
I wasn't, I thought I was great, and I was like, I remember I like to tell this story just for anyone who, I don't know, isn't willing to have a beginner's mind. You will after this little story, but it's really funny. So I used to live in San Diego, as I said. That's where I started my first business. And I remember one of my friends at the time was like, hey, I'm not able to sell at the Ocean Beach Farmers Market tomorrow. So how about do you want to sell? And I was like, oh my God, yes. Because she knew I was making jewelry. So I feverishly made all this cool stuff. And I thought it was the greatest. And I'm getting ready and I pack up the thing and I'm like, I'm going to sell out of everything. I'm going to sell out of everything. I'm going to make money on my own and do all the things, right? No one bought anything. One person looked at one thing and when she saw it was $50, she was like, okay. So I definitely overpriced myself, but there was I remember I went home that night kind of with my tail between my legs, and the guy that I was dating at the time, he goes, you know what? He's like, little humility is a real good thing. And I was like, God, that's a great life lesson. I never forgot it. So I didn't know what I wanted to do, but the truth was I always knew I wanted to connect people and make them feel something. So that was kind of the budding energy, was that I knew I wanted to connect to other people. I knew I didn't want to feel alone. And I knew I wanted to inspire people, connect with people and inspire them with beauty. And just, my first medium of doing that was jewelry. And I did that for 9 years.
Right.
I lived off of it for many years. Doesn't mean I was successful. And nor was I a smart business person whatsoever. But I was savvy in that I had a creative eye. I was willing to sit at my desk for hours on end and make things. I've always had, I think, that Cap rising. I have a very strong work ethic, maybe almost to a bit of I'm proud of it, but I think what I'm learning now is just to balance. I got very into human design in the last year or so, and learning to listen to my energy system, to actually when my body is like, no more, instead of me being like, keep fucking going, Can I cuss on here?
You just did, yeah.
Okay, cool. You can beep it out. But just really listening to myself. And anyways, I don't want to get on a tangent, but then I did electronic music.
I remember that. I remember
Yeah.
seeing that you did that.
Yes. I
Yeah.
played at the Haven. I think I forgot a chord though, so I didn't get to play or something. It
And
was a bummer. That was cool
sounds like
though.
that wasn't gonna be the ultimate path
No,
if you forgot the chord.
no. And I played some massive things. It was incredible,
Really?
but again, it was just like not the thing. It was not the thing. Like it wasn't working out. It didn't work out with my jewelry. It didn't work out with that because I think God is like, no. Like that's cool. Good job.
Yeah.
But that's not it.
So when you say God, how do you relate to that?
So I look at how do I relate to God?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I really interchange the word with like millions of things. So I'm like, God, life force. I call God life force. And then I
Sure.
think Life Force Academy, life force, universe, creation. I mean, honestly, I don't really know. I know it's a part of me. At least that's what I'm told. But I definitely will be transparent in that I struggle feeling like it's a part of me at times. Like I definitely feel more comfortable, but I'll tell a very quick, beautiful story about when I first realized that the universe was real and that God is real because not really raised with any religion. Like mother is Jewish, so like technically, I'm like
Jewish.
that's a great idea because the mother's Jewish, no matter what, children are Jewish. So I was like, that's a very smart. So I was essentially Jewish, but my mom took me to a Buddhist temple. My grandparents were very spiritually open.
Right.
My dad didn't have any belief system at all, other than survive. And my mom would take me to church, really whatever I wanted. So that kept my mind very open. But as I got into college, I got very fascinated by Judaism. And so I went to Israel on like the birthright trip.
Right.
Did you ever do that?
Did not.
Okay, it was cool, but it was beautiful. Israel's phenomenal. I went back twice and I remember I came back from the second trip and I was very disillusioned because my soul, my body, my truth was like, I don't connect with organized religion. I do not like the fact I'm told I have to do these things and be this way and do these specific things to like connect to God and be good in God's eyes. I was like, that just doesn't jive with me. So I was living in San Diego at the time. I was in my college apartment. And I remember I was going to sleep. I'd been home from Israel for about a week. And I was about to say my prayers, kind of like how I'd been taught, like this kind of Judeo Christian, like, dear God, blah, whatever, right? And I'm starting to say my prayers. And I remember being like, I stopped myself and I go, who am I talking to? I'm like, I don't believe in God. And I said that and I said it out loud. I said, I don't believe in God. And it was pitch black in my room. There's like a little like a window above my bed. And I just remember being like, wow, this is going to be really interesting if I am going to spend the rest of my life not believing in God. I'm like, okay. And I fell asleep and it was kind of like a black after that. But long story very short, I feel like as soon as I surrendered the concept, surrendered the idea, then it was like, the universal force, the God force, whatever you'd like to call it, was like, there you go. Okay, now we can communicate. And so a couple weeks later, I ended up dating someone and he gave me a book like a month into us being together because he could see I had spiritual interests, but I was not spiritual then at all. I was a very much a byproduct of my mom and dad. I was obsessed with making it, surviving, being perfect, getting married. I was like this, I was on a freaking rampage. And I remember, but little glimmers of spiritual, yeah, I was so intense. But like little glimmers of kind of spiritual things would pop through. And I remember this guy that I was seeing, he saw that. And he said, I'm going to give you some books. And one of the books was Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh.
Beautiful.
And I remember like taking it home, and the next day it was sitting on the side of my car, passenger seat, and I'm waiting to go into the Annie Leibovitz exhibition at Balboa Park, which is one of my favorite places in the world.
Balboa Park. Yeah,
Yes. Have
beautiful.
you been there? Oh, it's my fave. And so
World Beat Center right there.
yeah, everything. Like that place just gives me the feels. Like I can stare at the trees and like, I miss it. I love San Diego. But I just remember sitting there. I was waiting to meet a friend, and I grabbed the book off the chair, the passenger seat, and I start reading the back cover, and it's like, "Hello, like I'm God. I'm in like the next song you hear, the breeze in your hair, the next chance conversation that you hear. I just want you to know that I've always been with you. I've never left you. I am you, and I will always be here for you," or something like this.
What is the context you heard this in?
It was on the back of the book. It was on the
Oh,
back.
on the back of the Neil
Yes, I
Donald
had
Walsh.
the Neil
Yeah,
Donald
got
Walsh
you.
book, and I just picked it up, read that, kind of just, your intuition's like, hey, pick that up and read it. And when I read that, it was the first time in my entire life where I felt like something was responding to me. And I was so moved. I just wept because and I never, obviously never forgot it. It was such a profound moment. And that was when my spiritual path began, because I was like, oh, I'm a very visceral learner. That's why I've loved and love Kundalini, because I was actually having experiences of my consciousness and experiences of my totality that, I hadn't felt before, not just in Kundalini, but in yoga in general. And so anyhow, my relation to God is fascinating. Like, I don't really know. It's just, I feel and understand that I have a relationship to something so much bigger. And I also know that that energy is expressing itself through me. I don't logically understand it, but I feel it to be true. And I feel like I'm also in a phase of my life right now where I'm deepening that relationship. Like I'm deepening that bond, and I'm, having more of a faith that there is I think, I had a very intense experience when I was in Sedona recently, and I was having a gnarly day that day. Sedona, I think, will bring your shit up. And I was just like having this moment with myself where I was like, wow, like, God, do you love me? Are you here? Like, why is there so much pain in the world? Why do I feel so uncertain? Why, blah, blah, blah. I was just going on and on and on. I was laying on the red rocks. We were getting this like healing done. And I was like, wow, that's really how you feel. Like you don't trust God. You don't trust the plan, and you don't trust yourself. And so that was a powerful day, but so, very stream of consciousness, but like my relationship is, I think, healing and also always unfolding. And yet there's a deep love there and a deep knowing and maybe a deeper call to just surrender to not knowing, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. Mysterious. The great mystery is really what it is in a certain way. And that's super cool, to bring it back to what it made me think of. It's expressed in different ways. That the end of that story, what it made me think of, in like a biblical sense, they talk about, that God is with you on the peaks and in the valley. Yes. But it's really key. It's not God is with you. Okay, that's one way to think about it. And okay, if that works for somebody, God is with me. For some people, like a Christian context may really, speak to their spirit. Yeah. And other people something else. And some people it needs to be more secular for it to resonate with them. And then maybe it's still something that helps us be really happy. And it doesn't need to be anything but secular. And but then there's that thing where, all right, when things are going really well, then I like have trust in like in a God force or a supreme intelligence, a supreme love. But when things aren't going well, that becomes the moment.
Yeah.
And
That's what I've learned from you.
oh yeah,
Yes.
I think it's such a big deal.
It's huge.
Yeah, because you really actually don't have any trust if you're not trusting in both situations.
Exactly.
And when things are going beautiful, it's easy to say, thy will be done. You know what I mean?
I've heard you talk about that before, and I'm like, Jai Dave's personally calling me out right now.
Well, I'm calling myself out as well.
Yes.
But then when there's nothing but suffering, then it also has to be thy will be done, and only then does it ever have any power to it.
Yeah.
And that's a risk you have to take. You have to step out on a ledge to try that. And it's not just believing it, blindly. Yeah. It's not believing anything. It's courageously stepping out on a limb and testing your own sense of faith and your own sense of trust. And because if you don't test it, you can never find. You can never experience.
That's so powerful. And what is your relationship to God energy?
Just kind of that. You know what I mean? Like it takes different expressions at different times, really.
Yes.
And I love, I have such a love for Guru Nanak, and so that really, I'm influenced by all sorts of things. Of course, I also grew up Jewish, but then my path with Kundalini Yoga, but also my love and how much I've benefited from the Buddha's Dharma, and then it all has kind of rolled into one, and. So I often do relate I feel like a similar way that expresses itself through Nanak's poetry, where, as I was saying earlier in that class, thousands are thy eyes, and yet you you have no eyes. Thousands are your ears, and yet you have no ears, and so it expresses itself in everything, and in all beings and all living things, and also in all moments. And so that blends very beautifully with with concepts that really astrology sit on as their foundation. Because what's your rising sign? It's saying, all right, when you came out of your mother's womb, what was exactly happening in the celestial heavens at that very moment? And so there's got to be some intelligence there.
Absolutely.
And therefore, I don't know what's real, what's not real from my thinking mind. So I have to be able to tap into something else to get a sense of what's real and not real. And it has to be based on an experience. Otherwise, it's just philosophy.
Yes, I've heard you talk about that before, and it's always really spoken to me because, as I said, I feel like I am very. My mom always calls me out because she's like, Natalia, you just used that word completely wrong. That's actually not a word. You just made that word up and then you put it in the wrong context. So visceral hopefully is the correct, but just like visceral experiential.
Yeah, visceral.
Yeah, like it has to feel, and also from my chart's perspective, also having Neptune and Capricorn, and that's really for much of my generation, anybody close to, I was born 87, but it's like, it's fascinating. That Neptune placement in Capricorn, it's very like proof in the pudding kind of vibes. It's like, I'm not going to just blindly follow anything. It has to make material sense to me, and not just like material, like, in your, Gucci bag or whatever. It's just like, no, like it has to like ground through like a grounding wire.
That's your Capricorn.
Yes, that's that Cap energy.
Yeah, I have that too. Sometimes when I'm asking Drupada questions, because I'll meet with him, it's like a mentorship, and I'll ask him, and I'll be like, but why? But why is that like that? But why? And I think he's like that too. He's like, I see your Capricorn ascendant isn't going to allow me to just move on to the next thing without getting all the parts to click into place in a way that makes, like structural sense to me.
This is what helps me love and respect my boyfriend, my mother, my best friend Debbie, all the earth signs in my life, because I don't realize that I do the same thing. And then my Aries kicks in when they're like, but yeah, and who was there and what was the thing and what happened at 6:07 p.m. PST and blah blah, and just like they want the freaking minutia of the details to give the context. And my Aries will be like pissed. I'll be like, okay, I've been done with this conversation since 2 hours ago. But it's like, really, I do the same shit, and I'm especially like that with my spiritual practice. It's taken me a very long time. Like, I actually, as you taught for the mystery school tonight, and even just for me lately, like coming back into my practice with you and on LFA, it's been beautiful because I see and feel the years and years and years that it's taken me, not only at a subtle spiritual level, also physical strength, to really have like powerful, soulful spiritual experiences. For me, when I first started with yoga, Kundalini specifically, it was intense. Like, it was not enjoyable.
How old were you?
I mean, well, remember I
About?
told you
Yeah.
when I was like I used to like party really hard, and then I'd go to Kundalini at Golden Bridge, and I'd like still sometimes even be like hungover. But the truth was,
That's not so uncommon, I don't think, for people.
especially in Los Angeles, I'd say, but at least back then, this was a decade ago, but
Not
back
encouraging it.
then-
I'm just saying
No,
that
no,
people.
no.
My point with that was people who are
Seeking.
are
We were
seeking.
seeking.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I mentioned to you last night. It was like when I wanted to go to SRF for my birthday. When I was 24, you guys, I wanted to go on a silent meditation retreat at the Self-Realization
Self-realization fellowship.
Fellowship. And I called them on the phone, the 23-year-old me, because I was about to be 24. And I said, hey, it's going to be my 24th birthday. I'd really love to come down and meditate for the weekend. And because I knew it was a free retreat as well. And the lady basically just told me no. And I was like, wow. I'm like, she just told me no. And then that weekend, I was telling Jai Dave this story last night. I think I did more drugs that weekend than I'd ever done in my life. Like, I went off the Richters. But here's the thing, and I'm not glorifying that, but what I'm getting at was that all I was seeking was that feeling of connection and clarity and elation. And I wasn't getting that in my life. So for me, drugs and partying, that was it for me.
Yeah,
That's
they
what it
get
was.
you that for a minute.
It was a cheat. It was the cheat way.
The
And I
cheap
used
version, but yeah.
Yeah, it was the cheat way. I used to play video games when I was a kid, and my friends and I would find the cheat codes. And I was like,
Well, it's the
I did
cheap way in
same
the
thing at the
sense, but then it's also like the credit card way. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And to where it's just it's not
That's a good way
it's
of
not
putting it.
sustainable, and you're utilizing your resources
Yes.
in a very powerful way. I understand it
Wow.
myself, and then you got to pay that debt back.
That is right. And my 20s were me healing. Like, it was like I racked up a lot of nervous system exhaustion throughout my 20s, especially kicked off at the beginning when I was such a partier. But the thing for me, and this is what I discovered, was that when I was partying and doing drugs and drinking, it was the only time I felt I could have deep conversations with people around me where they'd actually like let the ego wall down and like have a conversation that felt satiating to my soul. But also, it was the first glimpse I'd ever had of me being confident in like in my depth, in my mysticism. And so in that way, again, I'm not glorifying any of these things because I had a problem, but at the same time, I credit that small chapter of my life to me stepping onto a spiritual path because I went so dark. I went so into the shadow of it all and again, I talk about this in my book in Mystical AF, but I have like a blog post that I wrote a couple years ago where I just told the whole story of the night that I stopped doing everything, the morning technically. And it was a very mystical experience. It was very powerful. It was, again, that sort of universal force coming in and being like, so what are you going to do with this, you know? And what's beautiful is like, after that, I just said, I'm done. Like, I just cold turkeyed completely. And then
And about how old are you then?
I think I was, I don't know, 23, 24.
I see.
No, I don't know actually. No, it would have been, okay, so that 20, it must have been my 23rd birthday. So it wasn't my 24th birthday. I wanted to go to SRF. So it was 23. I partied my face off that whole summer I did.
see.
And then it was like near my 23rd and a half birthday that I stopped everything. And then I took the next year and started to heal. It was a slow process.
Yeah. I think Kundalini Yoga is great for those types of situations specifically,
Yes.
among other things, because it has that aspect to it. Because there's so much to Kundalini Yoga
Yeah.
in terms of how it can be used and what aspects of it can be used, etc., what parts of it. But, you know, when going through like that, those types of peaks and valleys, to keep that metaphor going on,
Yeah.
and to rebuild the nervous system essentially
Exactly.
and balance the
Yeah.
glandular system.
And build the aura again.
The magnetism, yeah.
All that.
The
And
mental, that's essentially what that is the strength of the psyche, you know, the
Yes.
aura.
And clean out the subconscious, because I think all the drugs and stuff too, I was just suppressing, you know, I was so wounded and hurt from what happened when I was young, and I never dealt with it properly. I never requested those tools, and I think it was traumatic for my family. They wanted to move. They helped me heal. They protected me, but I think all of us wanted to just move forward, but you cannot stuff anything down. It must be dealt with. But when essentially, I think as well, when I was partying, it was also like I was seeking healing, you know? I was
Yeah, I think
really seeking to
we
heal.
understand that a lot more now.
Yeah.
Well, some people have understood that for, you know, some time, of course,
Yeah.
but I think as a society, we're starting to understand that more now than we did even, you know, 10 years ago.
Yeah,
And
instead of shaming people,
right,
it's
exactly.
like, oh, that you're hurting, you're
Yeah.
in pain, like
Yeah.
exploring resources, you know.
Yeah, that's part of this new age. And it's not like, okay, it's a new age now, people are going to do it because we know. No, the energy is already, like, even say, like in professional sports,
Yeah.
you know, and I think it's largely your generation, and who knows, you know, where those big and far out planets were in those couple of years helps bring that forth, because you have, like, you know, the younger basketball players, but now that aren't that young, just in the world that I follow, like never before was it cool or okay for men to be emotionally vulnerable and to
In
share
basketball?
in anywhere, but
Okay.
definitely in athletics. You know, that's the most macho, you know, don't show any weakness part of life, you know, we have as men, a lot of us.
Yeah.
And so even that has started to soften. Whereas,
Amazing.
so you work not exclusively, but largely with women. And so tell me about that. Like why do you do what you do?
Oh, that's an awesome question. I mean, I talked about this recently. If you ever feel unsure of why you're here, be what you didn't have for someone else. Like whatever you've helped yourself move through, like integrously, like in your body, in your embodiment. And so for me, oh man, why do I do what I do? I mean, like to get to the core of it, I do what I do because I know what it feels like to feel like you shouldn't be here. Like I know what it feels like to feel purposeless and lost and alone.
Right.
I know how that feels.
Like if you could have this Natalia Benson do a Zoom call with the 18-year-old Natalia Benson, it would have been really helpful.
Oh my God. Like it's so, one of the most touching things for me, all of my work, the women from being 19 to in their 60s, like just the fact that what I could offer or what I could share could help someone feel connected to or more themselves is the greatest miracle, the greatest miracle. And but something that very, very much touches me and really speaks to me is when I get to work with young women who are 19, 20, 21, 22. That was the roughest time for me.
Mm-hmm.
And also I honor that women in their 20s are also, oh man, they're light years beyond where I was. Like,
That's how all the
it's
generations are, you
cool.
know?
It's beautiful to
Mm-hmm.
see. Like, I've
Mm-hmm.
had people 10 years older than me say that to
Mm-hmm.
me,
Mm-hmm.
and then I say that to them,
Yeah,
and
it's
it's
human
beautiful.
evolution. That's
Yes,
why I like progressiveness.
me too.
Like, I can't figure out why people don't want to be more progressive, even in politics and stuff, because that's evolution,
I
you know?
know. We're
But
meant
that's just my
to.
worldview and my perspective.
There's a beautiful book, one of the first astrology books I ever looked at. I'm blanking on the name because, to be honest, it was so freaking heady. I never even really read it, but I love the cover, and I read little parts of it. And I remember there was a part of it that said, generations are not gaps in time, they're gaps in consciousness. And the outer planets essentially are what express that and like really speak to the gaps in consciousness. But, why I do what I do is just, to be what I did not have. Like in my 20s, I did not have a lot of positive guidance. I had little bits here and there. I had one woman in my life who, when she would speak to me about certain things, I was like, it felt like I was like grabbing at like a silk scarf in the wind. Like I was like, oh, thank you.
Mm.
But it was rare. It was
Mm-hmm.
very rare. And I just didn't have a lot of that. So it took me a minute. I definitely moved through a lot of, oh man, just fucking, sorry. I cuss a
It's
lot
all
in
good.
Aries, but I just moved through a lot of fucking shit
Yeah.
because I wasn't living on purpose. I was not aware of subconscious tendencies. I wasn't aware of my subconscious projections, and I was just living these looping stories.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had people who played into them and were living in their own looping stories. So we were just a freaking merry-go-round of
Mm-hmm.
bullshit. And I just, man, it took me a long time to get off that obsession with
Mm-hmm.
things being wrong.
The extreme of it, yeah. Because we all still have looping stories going on.
Yeah.
The
Oh, I
difference
still do.
becomes when you
I have
can
hypnosis in
notice
30 minutes. So
Oh, that's right.
no, it's fine.
Yeah, it's becoming more aware that they're there,
Yeah.
and then that they're not all that. They're not the final word. They only have so much substance, and ultimately they are lacking in substance entirely because they're always changing, and so they're only relative perspectives. So what I liked about that is you're coming at it from, genuine experience, and that comes across, of course, in what you do. And that's why when I first, met you really the second time, and because we met in the Kundalini Yoga world years ago, but I don't have much recollection of it. Mm-hmm. But then I have a lot of recollection the next time because I was like, who is this sister? And it was very clear you were genuine. And that's the key, isn't it? That has to be that. And that takes a while sometimes to get to that point. And then when you get to that, it's not like you got to it. It keeps on blossoming.
Yeah.
Like I'm still like don't know me entirely. And in fact, I feel like, that's God.
Yes.
That's the mystery. Like it's to know I don't know.
Yes, exactly. That's kind of what I was getting at, I suppose.
You did a beautiful job getting to it.
You just said it. Like it's like I don't know. It's
But
like
I only said it because I built on what you had already kind of stacked up.
But that's it. It's like I know that I don't know that I don't know that I know. That's it. It's like I don't know, but I know. It's just like
that's the Tao.
Baba Ram Dass said that in Be Here Now that like the greatest truths are the greatest dichotomies. And that really spoke to me. I remember reading that and I was like, that just makes sense to me because
Sure.
I mean, that to me is that expression. But yeah, you just put it together in words. So now I have a succinct answer for my next podcast.
What is what are the types of things that you're doing with the women that you're working with?
Yeah, so, well, lately it's really taken on. So I feel like my work really expresses through my experience. So, and my experience is ever changing. So I, of course, have the foundation of what first woke me up, which is astrology. And so I love to offer, I have a free resources section on my site, and that has everything from astrology to love and relationships to money to business. I mean, really everything I've been fascinated in and everything that I've shifted. Because you guys, like, I keep saying you guys, like we're in like a freaking group circle hangout here, Zoom call.
We essentially
We are,
are.
we are.
Yeah.
But you guys and gals